So when she asked me, "Can we pray for you?" I looked at her and I said, "Hi friends! Welcome back to Disabled in Nature, where we talk about all things that are disabled in nature, and sometimes we might even go outside. If you're new here, hi, my name is Marissa. I am disabled and I am a full-time power wheelchair user. Today I want to tell you a little bit of a story time. And that is about the time that someone asked if they could pray for me. Now, I do want to give a disclaimer to this story that it is not meant to target anyone who prays for people. If there's someone in your life that wants to be prayed for, or that you feel like you want to send well wishes to, and the way that you do that is praying for them, I think that is fine. However, these people did not know me, and I wanted to talk a little bit about how them asking if they could pray for me while out in public made me feel as a person with a disability, and why I think you shouldn't do it. Let me set the scene for you. So this happened during my graduate school time when I was living down in Florida, getting my master's degree in biology. I was working in zoo animal welfare science at the time, and I had several undergrad students helping me with my project. So when this happened, I was out in the guest area of the zoo, because that's often where we would observe the animals from. I was with an undergrad student and I was training her of how to do the behavioral observations for this project. We were standing there. Well, I suppose I was sitting there in my wheelchair and she was standing next to me. We had our iPads out in front of us and we were observing the animals. We were clearly working. We were wearing uniforms and we were looking at iPads. I was speaking to her to explain why I was writing down what I was writing down. We were clearly busy, like we were clearly doing something. Now, we were nearly done with our half-hour observation session with these animals, and I saw out of my peripheral vision a couple of older ladies approaching us. As a wheelchair user, someone with a very visible physical disability, whenever someone I don't know approaches me in public, I get a little tense. Like I get a little scared because you never know what people are gonna say. I've had some people say some stuff because I'm visibly physically disabled. So I was prepared for them to want to engage with me. As I saw them approaching out of my peripheral vision, one of them said, "Hi, excuse me." And so I turned and I was like, "Oh, hello." And she said, "Can we pray for you?" At this point, I had only been a wheelchair user for, I think, a couple of months. So this had never happened to me before. I have a lot of friends with disabilities who use wheelchairs, and they had said that this has happened to them, that people have come up to them in public and asked if they could pray for them. But it had never happened to me. But since I knew it was something that could happen, I was prepared. I knew what I was gonna say, and I was ready. So when she asked me, "Can we pray for you?" I looked at her and I said, "Why?" I will never forget the look on both of their faces. In response to my why, they both looked very flustered, very confused, kind of embarrassed, and they said, well, we just weren't sure if the wheelchair was like an everyday thing or..." And I said, "Oh, well, no, it is, but I'm fine." Thankfully, they took this as a no thank you, and they left, and they said, "Okay, you have a blessed day." And I was like, "Okay, you too." And that was the end of the interaction. So you might think that's a pretty benign interaction, right? There was no yelling, there was no cursing, there was no aggression, there was nothing necessarily bad that happened. But let me tell you how that interaction made me feel. So set the scene, right? In my view, I was a young professional at work training someone to help me do something. And when these ladies approached, that is the furthest thing from what they saw. Now, I know that in religious communities, asking if you can pray for someone and offering to pray for someone is a really nice thing to do. And I don't necessarily disagree. I think that if you know someone and they're going through something difficult and they want that support from you, I think it is perfectly acceptable to ask if you can pray for them, because in those communities, that's a nice thing to do for people that you know. These women knew nothing about me. They didn't know my life. They didn't know what my actual struggles were. All they saw when they approached was a girl in a wheelchair that must need help, that must need praying for. And it's difficult to put into words how discouraging that is to know that when someone sees you out in public, instead of seeing the bright-eyed, confident, successful young professional that you know that you are, they didn't see that. They saw someone who needed healed, someone who needed divine intervention to make their life better. And that made me feel really bad. I'm not a religious person. I was not raised religious, so I don't want to make a lot of commentary about prayer in religious communities because I don't really know too much about it. I just want to explain how this interaction made me feel. If you do want a perspective of someone who has grown up in a religious setting, who has a disability and has talked on this topic, I will link a video down below by Footless Joe. She's one of my favorite creators. She's a below-the-knee amputee and grew up in the church. And she has a wonderful video about her feelings around people asking if they can pray for her and how that sits with her as a previously religious person. But in my context, I just wanted to tell you how this situation made me feel. And the fact of the matter is that these women knew nothing about me. The only thing they knew about me was that I was at the zoo and I used a wheelchair. And that was enough for them to think that I needed prayed for. And it's really difficult existing in society knowing that that's how some people view you. It's like the most personal part of your life is always on display, and your deepest vulnerability is always out there for people to see. And I know that I'm a strong, confident, independent person, and I've made peace with my disability. I found pride in the way that I live my life. It's such a knockdown when you're confronted by the fact that other people don't see you that way, and that they see you as, and of course now I know that not everyone sees me this way, but certainly these women did. They saw me as someone who needed help, as someone whose life must be hard enough and miserable enough to need prayed for so that God can come fix it. And I don't think that's a nice thing to do to somebody that you don't know. And I know that for the people that do this, it's a very implicit harm, right? They don't know that they're causing this harm. They don't mean it. They're trying to be nice. I get that. But the underlying assumptions that come with this action of asking a stranger, especially one with a disability, if you can pray for them, is that you think that their life is bad enough that they need prayed for. And that's not true for so many people with disabilities. We're completely fine with how our lives are going, and we're happy and we're fulfilled. And to be confronted with this assumption is not kind. So don't. I guess that's my advice, is just don't. You never know how you're gonna make someone feel or how that's going to offend somebody that you don't know. Now, like I said, I don't hold this belief for people that you know. I think that if one of my religious friends were to tell me that they were gonna pray for me, that they were gonna put me in their nighttime prayers, I wouldn't mind that. I think that's a nice thing for them to do because I know that's how they show their compassion and their care for me as a friend. It's like the equivalent of me sending somebody good vibes, you know? It's a positive energy that as a friend they want to bring to my life. And I think that's fine. I accept that and I think that's nice. But it's because they know me and they know what good vibes I need. These women assumed that the good vibes I needed were to help me either get through life using a wheelchair or to be healed so that I don't need one. And I didn't really appreciate that because my life is fine and good. And I'm happy living my life in a wheelchair and with my disability. I just didn't appreciate the assumption, I guess. Also, this has never happened to me, but like I said, I have a lot of friends with disabilities who use wheelchairs and this has happened to them. Is that a lot of times when people in public ask if they can pray for you, they don't just mean like, oh, can I pray for you in my nighttime prayers later on my own? They want to pray for you right now. And more times than not, they want to pray on you. Like they want to touch you while they do it. One, I'm not religious, so I'm not really into engaging in prayer. That's not something I'm interested in. And also I'm not so keen about having strangers touch me. I had a woman kiss me on the cheek in public one time. I'll tell that story later. Yeah, don't do that either. But I will say, at least they asked And when I essentially said no, they left it alone and they continued on their visit to the zoo. So by the time this interaction was over, the undergrad student who I was training, who was standing next to me, was absolutely bewildered. We had missed so many intervals of observation that we had to scrap the whole session and start over. And we were almost at the end. We were almost done. Like, we had to redo it. So it was a whole half hour that we had to redo because the data was trashed at that point. So that was frustrating too. So if you're a person with a disability, perhaps you use a wheelchair or some other kind of mobility aid, perhaps you have some kind of facial or limb difference, for whatever reason, you have people come up to you in public too and ask if they can pray for you. And if you like that and if you want that to happen, happy for you. But if you don't, I would highly suggest turning the question around and pretending like you don't know what they're talking about. There is quite an inherent power dynamic in every social situation that you encounter if you have a disability, especially a physical one. And if you have to use a wheelchair, people are literally like standing over you. So there's this sense of a power imbalance in every encounter that you have. And I think that's why I have issues with people going out of their way to open doors for me or offering me help when I'm in public, is because even if they don't intend it, there is this inherent power dynamic that I feel. And I'm on the bottom, and that's really uncomfortable. And so I have employed this technique when appropriate to kind of flip that power structure and in whatever way I can take it back. For example, when these ladies asked if they could pray for me, it was their assumption that I would think it was obvious why they would want to pray for me, because I must have so many problems, because I use a wheelchair, right? So when I flipped it around on them and I asked them why, they had to say the quiet part out loud. And that made them very uncomfortable. I won't lie, I got a little bit of joy out of that. I'm always the one feeling uncomfortable. Sometimes it's nice to flip it around and make people realize what it is they're doing and what it is that they're saying. So that would be my advice. If you run into the situation and you don't like it, is take that power back, flip it around. Can we pray for you? Why? What's wrong with you? What do you mean? What happened to you? What do you mean? Is something wrong with me? Stuff like that, you know? Have a little fun with it. I hope this video won't be too controversial. I want to close out by saying I really do not mean to offend people that pray for other people. Like I said, if you know them and you know their struggles and they want you to pray for them, I think that's nice. I think that's a nice thing to do as a friend. Like if I tell you a struggle I'm going through and then you say, oh, I'll be praying for you, I'll say thank you. And I mean it. I do. And I feel like we're friends. Yeah? And you've seen my videos. I talk about my problems a lot on this channel. And so if you wanted to pray for me to help me, for example, manifest $106,000 to get myself a wheelchair accessible van, I will greatly appreciate that, because I do have real struggles and I would like them to go away. And if you think it would help, I'm all for it. All right. That's all for this one today, friends. If you liked the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. It's a little like button right down there. Go ahead and wheel your chair right over that subscribe button to see more thrilling content. Leave me a comment if you have any stories like this. How have you handled awkward interactions with strangers in public? And go follow me over on Instagram. I'll link my account down below. We have a lot of more additional fun over there, extra shenanigans. It is a fun time. Until next time, friends, be kind. Don't forget to get outside, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.